Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Rob Liefeld Day, so we are looking at the next issue that I own in his New Mutants run. That is issue 97, the one you see before you, January 1991. We won't be talking too long about this issue here because, gasp, it's a fill-in issue as far as the art on the inside goes. Nothing against this gentleman here, Guang Yap, does a pretty fine job as far as fill-ins go, but we are here for the Rob Liefeld art, so very quickly we will talk about the cover to this issue and then move on to next issue for today's review. So this is part of the Extinction agenda. I mentioned before, Rob Liefeld was kind of, didn't want to get really involved in this one, so he's done a few issues with layouts and stuff. One issue with kind of full art that Art T-Bear inked, which looks alright, and on this one he's got a fill-in, so he's really not, he's involved as little as possible in Extinction agenda apart from the covers. And the covers are great because we're getting more and more examples of Liefeld inking himself, and we're reaching kind of what I consider peak Liefeld period, right? So this the level of art on this cover is pretty similar to the level of art on X-Force, 1 and 2, which is kind of where I got introduced to X-Force, actually with issue 2, and where I really started collecting comics hardcore. So we're approaching that kind of period as well. I didn't actually buy these issues back in the day, but I definitely coveted them once I started collecting X-Force and trying to get back issues and things like that. And it took a while for me to actually get these old New Mutants issues over the years, a couple of decades. But I'm glad I did because, again, this is, to me, peak Liefeld. He's inking himself, and this period from the end of New Mutants till about when he does Youngblood issue 3 is the top kind of period for me, and that's why we're talking about this stuff here. Starting with this cover, definitely he's into that style, that X-Force style that he's going to have. Inking himself, so very faithful, obviously, to what's been put down by the pencil. And, just great dynamic shots of characters' mouths open, doing dynamic things. A lot of Liefeldisms on this one. Some huge shoulder pads on Cable. They just keep getting bigger and bigger. And this Cable design is already pretty different, I think, from where he started in issue 87, 10 issues ago, and definitely more in line with what we'll see in X-Force. I feel like while he was drawing this cover, maybe he was already working on X-Force #1 or in and around there, because this very much resembles more what's going to happen in X-Force #1 with Cable than maybe what came before with issues 96, 95, just before this one here. That Cable design is very different. This one with all the pouches and stuff is definitely more in line with X-Force #1. I love the way Liefeld draws these bulbous forearms and then just kind of straight out instead of being a kind of a slow kind of taper on the line. It just kind of creates that corner angle. I think it looks cool. It's different, and that's why Liefeld at the time was selling more and more comics. People could see that his art style was much more, I guess, in tune with kids in the 90s and what they were into. And as well as all those other Image guys, right? Some other Liefeldisms I think are hilarious. The hand here really just spent minimal time finishing it off. Not that it's that horrible, but at this angle, but the coloring just doesn't help at all, right? We're losing a bit of the end of the of his finger there. Even here, one of the claw casings is colored like the glove, so kind of a rush job, I guess, on the colors with this cover. And the fact that Liefeld, just draws the longest claws, which obviously once retracted would just pop out the back of his elbow, if we're in any way trying to reference reality here, which we're not. These are comic books. You can do anything pretty much and draw whatever you want and make those things seem real, even though they wouldn't work in real life. And I think Liefeld does a lot of that. He's not going after realism. He's going after excitement and bombast, and there's tons of it. And as a kid, we just love that stuff. Even just, I think he was probably working pretty fast on this one. There's a few signs there where, when he's inking, he goes into the claw here a little bit. There was another area, some of the lines, from the hatching here overlapping the claws, right? He didn't have time or didn't think to go back and clean that up. And really, when you look at the cover as a whole, this is nitpicking. I still think the illustration as is excellent, very dynamic, very interesting. That's just stuff, if you're on a deadline, maybe you move that art along, and really not the end of the world in the overall picture of this illustration, right? Still looks awesome. And this character here, I feel like we saw in last issue as well. I just want to say that, compared to later kind of nameless, faceless mobs, henchmen, I guess, that Rob Liefeld creates, this design is actually worked out and very intricate and interesting, where a lot of his faceless mobs later on, the designs get really simple to the point of almost being, I guess, either hilarious or sad. But with these characters here, who I think we saw a few issues ago, I think he does a really good job. That's it for this cover, though. We're going to throw that away and move on to the actual issue that we're reviewing today, New Mutants number 98. Obviously, this is a facsimile reprint. I do not have the original. Even back in the day, really hard to get your hands on that. And today, so cost prohibitive. I'm just, you know, if I had found a fairly cheap reader copy that's maybe a little bit banged up, I'd be down for that. But, you know, this facsimile was the next best option, even though the markup is huge on the original cover price, which was $1 US, $4 here for this exact same comic. And here's one thing I will say. I mean, I won't talk too much about this cover. It's pretty classic. Everyone, I'm sure, knows it. It is interesting that I know now that from reading interviews, I'm not quite sure exactly where I heard this, but that, you know, originally when Liefeld was in around this issue designing these two new characters and this cover and all that, actually all three new characters, right? They're all here. Liefeld, in his mind, Gideon was going to be kind of the breakthrough character that everyone's going to like, but it actually ended up being this guy here, Deadpool, who, you know, if you know anything about Marvel movies and stuff, you know Deadpool and his impact on the culture, and how huge he is, right? So Rob Liefeld, you know, back in the 90s, creating two very enduring characters, Cable, and to an even greater extent, Deadpool, and this is his introduction issue here. You know, like I said, classic cover, Rob Liefeld inks. I think it's great. I copied this pose lots of times. Let's crack her open, have a look inside. First thing I will say is I get a sense from the coloring and the reprint on this book. I don't think they've changed anything. The only difference is the paper. So glossier paper tends to have blacker ink. I have said many times, I think I do prefer newsprint overall. But there's something here that just gives me a bit more indication as to what they were expecting with the colors, and that you don't get to see on newsprint because of how newsprint affects printing in color. Here, we're getting maybe a truer version of what was originally intended. And you can see that we're slowly moving towards, you know, the kind of tones we're going to see with computer coloring just a little later on at Image Comics. So let's look at the credits. One big thing you got to notice here, no more Louise Simonson. She's gone. Now we officially have Rob Liefeld doing the plot and the art. Fabian Nicieza or Niciezi, I'm not quite sure. Again, me and names, not very good. Providing the script, so the dialogue. Joe Rosen letters, and Steve, I know just because I know it's Steve Buccellato doing colors here. Another one of Rob Liefeld's tropes, the double page spread that you have to turn to look at. A little bit annoying, but it doesn't ever annoy me that much as long as the actual art is, you know, interesting and maybe there's a good reason for it. So this big vertical panel, you know my love of double page splashes with insert panels. That's what we got here. Always think that's a really kind of good way to create excitement with a two-page spread, but also not sacrifice any bit of storytelling or just, you know, doing it to create a pretty image. So basically, we're introduced to Gideon, who here is training in his own danger room. All these mutant groups seem to have their own kind of holographic or AI generated, at least back then. AI didn't exist, but that kind of thing. We're computer generated training robots. I don't know what you call that specifically. Let's just stick to danger room, I guess. Everyone's got their own danger room. I like this forced perspective here, really well done. And this issue, I think officially is the first issue that Rob Liefeld is inking himself. And like I said, we're in and around peak Liefeld, so some of the best looking Rob Liefeld art. Once again, I definitely think the best is when he's inking himself. One little element that I think has been present on Cable, we really haven't talked about, or maybe he brings it in and then takes it out, but these kind of dark streaks here, I'm not quite sure. I don't think he had them at the beginning. Maybe he did and I didn't notice, but at some point that goes away. But he's still kind of doing it here. And in an interview with Liefeld, I've always wondered about that too. The line quality on these two pages seems to change a bit. There's something where you're losing some of the line. It gets even thinner. In an interview, Rob Liefeld talked about, it was probably during the scanning process or something, but that's a production issue. The actual page, if you see it, looks pretty much like all his other pages as far as line width. on the page. It's more consistent. So there's just something in the production here. Once again, we've got our faceless kind of, you know, Rob Liefeld robots here. Cable looks really cool. There's some weird stuff going on with the leg anatomy in this issue, and I'll point it out later as well. A few examples of that. Now we're back to proper printing here. And Cable throwing up his hand here and doing something we don't see much of later on. This page also looks a little odd. I feel like maybe someone was giving him some sort of inking assist, or a different inker was at play here, because all these lines are just not typically Rob Liefeld lines that we tend to see. Still at this period though, doing lots of storytelling, still lots of panels per page. This sequence is hilarious. Economy of line and economy of work here. These buildings in the background are kind of just hatched. Laughable. Maybe you're trying something here, but you know, maybe this could work if it's a little more consistent and with taking a little more time and care. I mean, it does work. We understand that they're buildings for sure, but I mean, like, anyone looking at that is going to think that the artist really did take a shortcut. And you know, the inconsistencies rather in the coloring here don't help it at all. But this whole sequence, yeah, just pretty funny. Just a quick 2 pages. I need to get rid of a character's father, and he's been poisoned, and that's basically how it goes, right? Just 2 pages to get rid of that and move on with what are the more interesting bits of the story, right? Richter is still around. He's going to be leaving soon. If you look at the art, I feel like we're pretty close. The closest to Rob Liefeld's inking up to this point was Art T-Bear. That issue he did where he inks Rob Liefeld, I think looks really quite similar to the kind of ink lines we're getting here. And again, we get a page turn here. Just Rob Liefeld's odd kind of plotting where characters are just somewhere and something happens all of a sudden. It's not really quite explained. So right here, Cable is just at the library, you know, checking out some books presumably, and Boom, that's a funny sound effect. You know, some sort of explosion or impact or something. Not even quite sure what happens there. And of course, here's the first page where we're introduced to Deadpool. Copied this image quite a bit as a kid. I love the kind of, you know, when they're diagonal lines, this hatching, I like to call it like barbecue hatching is I guess what I call it. Looks like something was on the grill, right? And of course, all the Liefeld tropes he's talked about, you know, he was really into G.I. Joe. So Deadpool, as you know, lots of pouches, kind of a military vibe, swords and guns as well, which we'll see a little bit later. Not quite sure where he's keeping those, but all of a sudden it does pop out here. I've always just found the way Liefeld draws Deadpool's face just interesting. His head, the whole shape, like it's all really curvy and round and just kind of funny looking, but fun. It is kind of a Spider-Man vibe, obviously, but there's just, I don't know, there's just something fun and iconic about it, right? There's a reason he's kind of stuck around. He's got a fairly simple design, not quite fully worked out here, I think, with the patterns on his arm, but it's pretty close. Didn't change that much from its original inception to what we see, for example, in the movies now. I was talking about weird kind of proportions and anatomy with the legs. Here's one example here. Like if you really think about Cable's body here, you know, you kind of go through, the arm would come down here. All of a sudden his body gets really small, and this foreshortening is just horrible. There's just weird anatomical issues here with Cable's body, and there'll be some more. Feels like this issue was drawn very quickly. Not that there's anything wrong with that. They've got deadlines they got to meet, but you know, some of the art tends to suffer. But overall, still, you know, keeping it exciting and stuff. And again, that's just being very nitpicky. There are other images that look really cool throughout this issue. You know, some cool kind of posy Liefeld art, I guess is what I would call it. Just I don't know, just an odd choice of getting you know, stabbed right in the thigh next to the groin. I just always thought this was a weird kind of choice, just visually, of Deadpool throwing a knife at his thigh. Maybe he was aiming for his crotch and missed a little bit. I don't know if that's you know, Deadpool's usually pretty skilled, so that would be an odd thing for him to miss. But of course, you know, all the New Mutants come to the rescue, and Deadpool has some sort of wires that come out of his gloves here. So I guess he's like, oh, I thought maybe electrocuting, but no, he's just strangling the Richter here, right? And all of a sudden, once again, that Liefeld plot thing where just something just surprisingly happens. What's going on here? Thunk, thunk, thunk. Well, it appears that Deadpool's been stabbed in the back by this new character as well. So it's almost like Domino's introduction mirrors Deadpool's. It's pretty much the same introduction, really. It introduced almost in the same way. Cable knows her. She's familiar to him. And all of a sudden, like, just Liefeld is not spending time on Deadpool at all here. And even his costume design is, changed quite radically. There's a whole dark section that's not there anymore. So kind of a flub on the art there. So, I mean, not honestly the most exciting issue of New Mutants. I do think it gets a little bit better with those first few issues of X-Force. But, along the way, we're seeing a lot of the stuff that will become kind of the staples of X-Force and what goes on in that series and the characters. Liefeld is basically just, with this issue and the next two, is closing off New Mutants and establishing who his team is going to be on X-Force, right? When kind of the New Mutants title gets rebooted as X-Force. So he doesn't really particularly enjoy Richter, so Richter runs away. And this quite creepy scene where Roberto is visited by Gideon in the night in an open bathrobe, very odd, to tell him that his father has been killed. And as we'll find out later, spoilers, Gideon is the one who basically had him killed. And that is how the issue ends. So there we go. The art is slowly, moving in that awesome direction of the stuff I loved as a kid and got into, and again, that I think is peak Liefeld. I think we're seeing more of it on the covers than on the inside of this issue, for example. So I feel like maybe some of these covers were drawn after or a little bit later than when the inside of the issue was drawn. I could be wrong. Maybe he's just obviously spending a little bit more time on the cover, make it a little more illustrative. Comic artists have been known to do that, spend a little more time on the cover and work through the pages a little faster to meet deadlines and stuff. Obviously, the cover is what attracts people's eye to buy the book, so I can totally understand why some artists are willing to do that. So there you go. That is my big baby review of New Mutants number 98. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, anything you'd like to add or let me know concerning this issue, concerning Rob Liefeld's art, let me know in the comments below. I too appreciate it, and I'll try to reply as best as I can to all your comments. Thank you so much, all of you out there who are watching the videos. If you're not subscribed yet, please do so. It helps the channel, helps get us out there and reach more people who are into the same kind of stuff as we are. Hope you enjoyed today's video and all the other videos. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Like, subscribe, like, subscribe.
King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.